At the age of 34, I held the position of sales director at a leading firm in New York. My spouse, Bradley, who was 60, was the proprietor of the company where I was employed. He was taken with my capabilities and won over by my charm from our very first encounter. To cut a long story short, I managed to win his heart in a month, leading to his marriage proposal. Naturally, I accepted. After all, who would pass up the chance to marry the wealthiest eligible man in the city? Despite the significant age gap of 26 years between us, Bradley and I experienced no problems in our relationship. He was very patient with my grievances, ensuring that our disagreements remained mild and never turned into full-blown disputes. He was nearly fully aware of who I was, including my desires, dislikes, and even my most guarded secrets. However, he was oblivious to the fact that I was growing increasingly bored and was secretly following my old flame, Michael, on social media. Michael, also 34, was a high school crush whose allure I had never managed to shake off. Whenever his name came up, I couldn't help but get giddy like a schoolgirl because of his captivating eyes and the way he made me feel valued with a dance at our prom when no one else would be my date. That evening was transformative for me, as it's not easy to forget someone who boosted your self-worth on such a pivotal night of your adolescence. So, you can imagine how crushed I felt when I found out he had married someone from his church 6 years prior. I believed I was more attractive than her, and I was convinced everyone was wondering why he chose her over me. That's probably why I hastily agreed to marry Bradley when he proposed a year later. When Bradley popped the question, I thought my chances with Michael were gone, or at least that's what I believed. Then, out of the blue, an old classmate informed me about Michael's divorce, which nearly caused me to spill my coffee in shock. Barely able to contain myself with the news, I realized that if I ever wanted a shot with Michael, now was the time to act. A month later, I initiated a conversation with Michael, engaging in casual chatter. Before long, I was offering to help him with anything as he attempted to move past his divorce. I had to conceal my excitement about reconnecting with him, but inside, I felt ready to sacrifice everything, including my marriage, to be with him. It may seem foolish, but let's face it, any woman in my position might have done the same. After several weeks of messaging that led nowhere, I decided to be more forward and asked Michael out to dinner while Bradley was away on business. He accepted the invitation. I dressed in my finest attire and applied the brightest red lipstick for our date, which ended with us in a hotel room. For the following 3 months, our secret meetings continued, and being with him felt as perfect as I had always imagined. However, I sensed something was amiss when he confided that his business was failing and he needed $100,000 to offset his losses. A week later, he requested to borrow my Bentley to impress potential investors and asked for an additional $100,000, claiming it was for his mother's surgery. I continued to fulfill Michael's financial demands, yet deep down, I suspected he was only interested in my wealth. Unbeknownst to me, Bradley had been tracking my activities all along. Indeed, my husband was privy to all my actions on social media, including my daily monitoring of Michael. He was even aware of the dress I chose for my first outing with Michael. He knew about my long-standing infatuation with Michael since our high school days, yet he never confronted me about it. All the business trips he took were actually schemes to test whether I would engage in an affair in his absence. I succeeded in the test for the first 4 years, but in the 5th year, he caught me being unfaithful with the person I had been daydreaming about. Bradley didn't confront me directly. Upon his return home, he completely disregarded me, walking by as though I was invisible. I pounded on his door until my knuckles were in pain, yet he refused to let me in. The messages I sent through messaging applications were left without a response. I was desperate to have a conversation and plead for his forgiveness, but it had become too late. The following day at my workplace, my colleagues assembled to watch a video of me and Michael sharing a kiss. Anxious that more footage might surface, I quickly grabbed the remote and shut off the display. That same day, I was handed a letter of dismissal without any severance, with the reason being the misuse of funds. The bank manager informed me that my accounts had been shut down, and upon arriving home that night, I found my possessions outside the gate. Honestly, I was kicked out of my own house after providing him with 5 years of pleasurable companionship. Was I such a terrible spouse that he couldn't show me a basic level of respect? Did he really expect me to accept that he had never been unfaithful during his trips? Now, a year has passed, and I'm left without money, family, or a place to stay. I continue to attempt to mend things with Bradley, but he consistently closes the door on me whenever I approach. If I could reverse time, I would steer clear of Michael since he wasn't worth sacrificing my entire life for. I'm Dave, and I'm in a relationship with my girlfriend, Kelly. Our tale began when I inadvertently eavesdropped on Kelly's candid phone conversation with a good friend. We've been a couple for roughly 2 years, and I've been contemplating proposing to her. Kelly is the kind of woman who typically doesn't stand out in a crowd. At a cursory glance, her beauty and kindness might not be immediately apparent. She prefers to conceal her physique with oversized clothing to avoid the attention that her nearly flawless body draws. However, once you get to know her, you'll quickly recognize her inner beauty and warmth. We met by chance at a New Year's Eve celebration hosted by a friend we both knew. I had no clue that this incidental encounter would blossom into a romance. We discovered numerous shared interests, and even though she didn't captivate me initially, I gathered the nerve to ask her out after a week. After dating for several months, she caught me off guard one night by visiting my place. Eager to make the evening memorable, I cooked a delectable meal for her. As we watched a movie on my couch, our tender moments escalated into fervent kisses. Suddenly, we found ourselves in my bedroom, and I was taken aback by Kelly's uninhibited nature. She exhibited boldness and a sense of adventure, challenging limits. I found myself struggling to keep pace throughout the night, but our connection deepened significantly from that point on. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. I have a tendency to forget or overlook details, unintentionally hurting her. Conversely, she, in typical fashion, sometimes acted in ways that exasperated me. We didn't cohabit, largely due to the influence of her parents. Despite our intimacy, she felt that living together would complicate things due to their expectations. Out of profound love, I honored her wishes and never pressured her. However, one day I accidentally heard her talking to her friend, which filled me with dread and remorse. It was evident that I had trouble remembering significant dates like anniversaries or Valentine's Day, often taking days to recognize my oversight. After spending an intimate evening together, Kelly departed. While I was in the restroom, she made a call to Gina, which stunned me as I believed our relationship was flourishing. She voiced her concerns about how I overlooked Valentine's Day, causing her to question my affection and suspect that I was merely keeping her as an option. I felt a profound sense of accountability. Kelly voiced her dissatisfaction, blaming my forgetfulness as the issue. She questioned the necessity of an attractive man who neglects the details and stated that if I forgot Valentine's Day again, she would end our relationship. Gina's moment of silence appeared to hold significance for her. Kelly, reflecting on Gina's support, regretted not seeking her advice sooner. Kelly and I had a tense relationship due to my doubts about Gina's sincerity. Kelly was under the impression that Gina felt she deserved a better partner than me. During our 2-year acquaintance, I couldn't remember Gina saying anything positive about me. I believed Gina was attempting to persuade Kelly to break up with me, which fueled my anger. Rather than recognizing my own flaws in dating and relationships, I placed the blame on Gina. Kelly pointed out that our problems extended beyond just Valentine's Day. The holes in my memory were causing discomfort for Kelly, who had to constantly remind me of significant dates. I thought that if I could remember just one special date and surprise her, she might feel more valued and less disappointed. Kelly sometimes felt reduced to an object for pleasure, easily overlooked. After an extensive talk, she bid farewell to Gina, and I suspected Gina had hidden agendas. My aversion to Gina grew stronger. I questioned Gina's audacity in trying to interfere with my relationship with Kelly. My growing anger possibly set the stage for what happened next. Later, I dropped Kelly off at her place and sought guidance from my friend Mike, hoping for his insight. Unfortunately, Mike wasn't very helpful. It seemed as though he was almost looking forward to a breakup between Kelly and me, possibly to pursue her himself. That's when I thought of reaching out to Sam, whom I hadn't spoken to in some time, for his perspective. As I prepared to propose to Kelly, I found myself clinging to our relationship. I intended to discuss the proposal after a shower on that crucial day, but an overheard conversation derailed my plans. Thankfully, Sam turned out to be a dependable friend, providing much-needed advice and support. Aware of my tendency to forget, I made an effort to write down most of the details, and immediately after leaving Sam's place, I began taking steps to ensure a future with Kelly. Remembering Kelly's preferred restaurant, I quickly made a reservation. I recalled that Gina had mentioned this restaurant, possibly to show off her boyfriend's invitation and suggest I wouldn't do the same for Kelly. Nevertheless, I didn't delay in finalizing the reservation and paying in advance for our table. While searching for a unique gift for Kelly, I came across a beautiful brooch. At the jewelry store, I was drawn to the wedding rings and chose a magnificent diamond engagement ring. The ring's steep price necessitated a transfer of funds from my savings to complete the purchase immediately. Subsequently, I purchased a new suit with the assistance of a helpful salesperson. Lacking a sense of style, I trusted the salesperson's guidance to select a suit that would give me a fashionable look. Stepping out of the fitting room, I was taken aback by the murmurs of several women complimenting my appearance. Despite their flattering remarks, I felt uneasy. To alleviate this discomfort, I bought another suit and visited the barber shop for a new haircut. This was a difficult choice for me, as I usually preferred a simple look, but Sam was convinced it was the right move. That evening, Kelly couldn't help but praise my new haircut, showing her approval of the change. Kelly noticed my new haircut and asked about the reason for the alteration. I casually mentioned that I thought she would like it and that I was tired of my previous style. Kelly's curiosity was piqued by my sudden change, prompting her to probe the meaning behind my weariness of the old look. Today, Kelly's unexpected line of questioning left me feeling unprepared. I wondered if Kelly's time spent with Gina had influenced her, as I detected an underlying strain. Despite normally feeling at ease around Kelly, I was anxious and decided to remain silent. It was as though I was asking someone on a date for the very first time, particularly because I was inviting her to an exclusive Valentine's Day dinner. As the conversation progressed, I could feel my anxiety intensifying under the burden of expectations and pressure. Kelly then expressed concern for my state and wondered if I was proposing a romantic dinner. I affirmed and questioned why it would be odd for us to dine out together, noting that it was our first Valentine's Day date. Declaring my affection for her, I explained that my intention was simply to demonstrate my love. I have some plans, but I guess I can cancel them, I considered. When I inquired about Kelly's Valentine's Day plans, she said she didn't have anything significant planned, just a party with Gina, but she accepted my invitation. Intrigued by Gina and the party, I probed Kelly to see if she had anything she wished to disclose, voicing my unease about our current situation. Kelly responded to my apparent worries, asking what had been troubling me. She recalled her extensive history with Gina and explained that she had made plans with her, assuming I wouldn't ask her out on Friday. She suggested I shouldn't overthink it, yet I detected a hint of irritation in her voice. I had to confess that I might have come across as jealous, which was indeed the case. I was also scared of losing the most important person in my life. That night, Kelly chose to return home early, and I was plagued by the thought that she might break up with me. Despite normally being affectionate, she appeared aloof. Reflecting on the past week, I realized we hadn't spent much time together, and on Friday morning, everything seemed to fall apart. At work, I received a call from the restaurant, informing me that my reservation had been cancelled because a wealthy individual had reserved the entire venue, necessitating the cancellation of all other bookings. Despite my fervent objections, the restaurant staff insisted on cancelling my reservation and refunding my payment. In a panic, I tried to find another reservation, but to no avail, as all places were fully booked. Overwhelmed with disappointment, I resigned myself to the idea of an intimate dinner at home. Yet, my plans were further crushed by a second phone call with dreadful news. A fire had ravaged my house, reducing the apartment below mine to ruins, and my possessions, including treasured clothing and personal items, were drenched and irreparably damaged. I was now faced with the task of finding a new place to live. As I slumped back in my office chair, I was engulfed by a sense of void. In just a short span, my entire life had been turned upside down. The day was beyond salvageable, and it dawned on me that the engagement ring I intended to propose with was on the dresser in my now devastated apartment. I left work immediately and went to see the remains of my home. The once welcoming room was now a gaping, dark chasm. My belongings and clothes were not just damaged, but also reduced to ashes. Staring at the place where my dresser used to be, I saw a massive hole leading down to the basement. Sitting on the curb with my head in my hands, I dreaded the thought of what further misfortunes lay ahead. Unbeknownst to me, there was no end to the potential for things to get worse. Suddenly, I saw Kelly driving past in the Jeep of someone I had thought was a friend, quickly averting her gaze from my distraught figure on the side of the road. I had lost her, and it seemed my so-called friend had taken advantage of the situation. Later, while rummaging through the debris, I was astonished to find the ring still safely ensconced in its box. Despite this minor triumph, I questioned what it meant in the grand scheme of my current predicament. I visited my parents' home in the suburbs, cleaned up, and collected myself. There, I still had some clothes, slightly out of fashion but wearable. Irritated by the incessant talking of my parents, I decided to go back into the city and found myself at Sam's. Upon my arrival, Sam and his wife greeted me with warmth, showing concern for my health and well-being. I recounted the day's happenings to Sam, and together we enjoyed a meal. In the midst of our dinner, the phone rang abruptly, and Sam passed it to me, indicating that Gina was on the line and stressing the call's significance. As I took the call, a wave of anger, disappointment, and deep resentment surged through me. I harshly criticized Kelly, convinced that she was calling to revel in my misfortune, and I questioned whether she was now content. The possibility that my true love could be with someone else left me feeling as though my world was crumbling. I even suggested that she might have had a hand in the ruin of my home. Gina, taken aback, refuted any suggestion of schadenfreude, expressing bewilderment at my altered demeanor. She offered reassurances that Kelly's love for me was unwavering, despite my suspicions, and she expressed sorrow for the recent calamity I faced. Gina clarified that she had only just been made aware of the fire at my residence and had attempted to reach me throughout the day. I was baffled by Gina's delayed awareness of the incident. I described how I had spotted Kelly driving the same car earlier, and how she seemed to conceal herself upon noticing me. Overwhelmed by rage, I ended the call abruptly. Despite Sam and his wife's efforts to dissuade me, I expressed my gratitude and departed, intent on drowning my sorrows in alcohol. Sam grasped the severity of the predicament I was experiencing. I found solace in a bar, the VC, a haunt I frequented before Kelly came into my life, now ironically reminiscent of a past event. At the bar, I began to consume alcohol excessively. The bartender hesitantly continued to serve me more drinks than was advisable. By this point, I was significantly inebriated and struggling to maintain composure. Kelly and Gina entered, with Kelly's eyes red from weeping and Gina displaying anger. Yet, their presence was of no consequence to me as I sat there, detached, savoring my final drink. The bartender kept his distance, perceiving my dejection. When Kelly tried to embrace me, I rejected her, incensed that she would even attempt it. I confronted her, asking if her ride in Mike's Jeep that day was the reason for her actions. Offended, I lamented having caught her in a compromising situation with him, attempting to justify my reaction. Kelly persisted, pointing out my drunken state and suggesting we discuss matters at her place. Torn by conflicting feelings, I adamantly insisted that we either talk on the spot or not at all. Despite my rage and intoxication, my profound love for her prevented me from calling her something as vile as trash. Deep inside, I was convinced of her infidelity. Gina, for the first time, approached me to express her disappointment. She noted that under different circumstances, not marred by my drunken despair, she might have responded differently. Gina implored me to let go of my pride, reminding me of Kelly's deep affection and how I was pushing her away. She suggested that I rest and approach the conversation with a clear head in the morning. I then reflected on Gina's positive influence over the past 2 years. I recognized that she had always perceived me as being engulfed by negativity and had hoped from the start that Kelly and I would end up together. I finished my drink and reached for the last remaining glass on the bar. As I consumed it, I was hit by a wave of dizziness and numbness. The excessive drinking muddled my consciousness. Eventually, I passed out. The bartender and the 2 women assisted in getting me into Kelly's car. Awakening the next morning, I was met with a severe headache. Gradually, I rose from the bed and made my way to the bathroom. After some time, I managed to get up and start moving around. To my astonishment, I found my clothes laundered and neatly folded on a chair in the room's corner. As I got dressed, I noticed that my pockets were devoid of their contents. As I entered the kitchen for a drink, I noticed Gina and Kelly seated, seemingly waiting for me. Gina, ever the sharp one, commented on my sour disposition. Her unexpected remark caught me off guard as I had expected her to be gloating over a victory against me. Kelly sat quietly, her gaze locked onto the table. Annoyed, I confronted them, expressing my hope that they were pleased with themselves and pointed out that Kelly had not slept the night before. When Gina inquired if I was all right with the situation, I made it clear that I was anything but all right. I recounted the previous night's troubles, detailing the terrible scene of my apartment ablaze and my vexation at having to seek shelter in a dubious bar. Gina disclosed that Kelly had informed my parents, located Sam, and figured out my potential whereabouts. They had searched various locations, and at the last one, they were appalled by my condition. Exasperated, I questioned their reason for bringing me there, suggesting that Kelly might be taking pleasure in my downfall. I suspected that my parents had requested Kelly to take care of me. Upon looking at Kelly for the first time, I saw her shoulders trembling as she wept. Overwhelmed, I collapsed into a chair, facing the one who held my affection. Gina, with a serious look, produced items from her pockets, a receipt from a dinner, a certificate for a recent clothing purchase, and a singed box with a ring inside. She expressed her irritation at discovering these before doing my laundry and pressed me to clarify their significance to Kelly. Ashamed, I glanced at the receipts and the box, my face turning red. Kelly, having stopped crying, was now observing me. To avoid further embarrassment, I sought clarification from Kelly, asking why she left with Mike and attempted to conceal her identity. She dismissively stated that I wouldn't comprehend. Gathering my courage, I urged her to enlighten me and demanded to know the full story. Kelly recounted that Mike had picked her up after learning about the fire to see if anything could be salvaged. Upon finding me in a dire state by the roadside, she impulsively invited me to her home. She admitted that it was a poor decision, driven by a desire to assist. Kelly implored me to abandon my unreasonable attitude, stressing that she cared for me more than I realized. Gina scolded me, reminding me that Kelly was also struggling. It became clear that I had misjudged the past day's events entirely. I recognized that Gina had not intended to sabotage my relationship with Kelly and appreciated her support for us both. I saw the injustice and offense in my unfounded allegations. Gina urged us to concentrate on the love and bond that connected us, rather than on negativity and distrust. Trust and open communication are crucial. I understand your protective feelings towards Kelly, but rest assured that my intentions are genuine and respectful. I deeply care for Kelly's happiness and hope you can recognize this, setting aside any misgivings or animosity you may hold against me. I attempted to mend your relationship. Kelly considered ending things with you to pursue a relationship with Mike, who always remembers the significant dates and details you tend to overlook. Please, allow me to explain. Kelly truly loves you, but she feels that the love is not reciprocated lately. She believes you're on the brink of breaking up with her. I disagreed with her perspective and shared my opinion. If you paid more attention to important dates and other matters, you both would likely be much happier now. Defending you is incredibly challenging, especially when you behave foolishly. Like yesterday, I couldn't shake off feeling like an utter fool, a sentiment that still lingers. It suddenly hit me that Gina had been supportive all along. As I pondered over the setbacks I faced yesterday, I allowed pessimism to skew my perspective, always expecting the worst. Sitting there, I was engulfed by an intense feeling of foolishness. Clutching the receipt, I realized that our reservation at Del Rio's had been scrapped because a wealthy individual had reserved the entire venue. I had intended to ask Kelly out to dinner there the previous night, hoping to create a memorable evening for her. Despite Gina's lack of enthusiasm for Del Rio's, I insisted it was the finest dining spot in town. I recalled it was Valentine's Day and mentioned I had made a reservation, only for it to be cancelled. Nevertheless, I stressed to Kelly that making the night special was what mattered most to me. I recounted the lengths I went to in purchasing a new suit, and Gina's surprised look at the thought of me clothes shopping. I admitted that my usual attire was nothing more than simple blue jeans and a t-shirt. Both Gina and Kelly were taken aback, and I secretly relished their astonishment, though I wished the circumstances had been better. Holding the ring, a rush of memories inspired me to get down on one knee and take Kelly's hands. Confessing my recent discomfort, I admitted that I might not excel as a ladies' man or remember significant dates, but my love for Kelly was deep and true. I placed the box in her hands, our fingers entwined, and mustered the courage to propose to her. Gina was shocked by the sudden proposal, and tears rolled down Kelly's cheeks. A hush fell over the room as I glanced at Gina and then back to Kelly, at a loss for words. With a tender motion, Kelly leaned in and slowly opened the box, unveiling a ring that matched her beauty in its brilliance. Her hands shook as she carefully took the ring from its cushion and placed it perfectly on her left ring finger. The ring's perfect fit amazed me, contradicting the jeweler's assurance that it would need resizing. My astonishment turned to elation when Kelly embraced me, accepting my proposal with her warm tears on my face. Holding her close, I noticed Gina, who was also moved to tears. We embraced Kelly, exchanging heartfelt kisses. Kelly's eyes searched mine with a look I couldn't quite decipher. Suddenly, Gina pulled Kelly into a tight hug, sharing an emotional moment. Both were in tears, admiring the ring as it sparkled on her finger. I started to rise from my chair but then sat back down, watching them dance around the room in joy and astonishment. Remaining seated, I was interrupted by the phone ringing, and the answering machine captured Mike's voice expressing doubts about my suitability for Kelly after yesterday's events. He proposed a dinner to discuss things. Before Kelly or I could respond, Gina snatched the phone, declaring Kelly's disinterest in Mike or any other man, and told him that Kelly had found someone special and that he should back off. Gina's laughter erupted after she hung up abruptly. Kelly and I soon joined in the laughter. Gina's sudden hostility towards Mike took me by surprise, but it was evident she had some fondness for me, or at least she could stand me. Later that night, as we lay in Kelly's bed, she nestled her head on my chest, the soft glow highlighting the engagement ring, setting a serene mood. Even in the subdued light, the ring's sparkle did not fade. Squinting, I could see a lone tear shimmering in her eye. With concern, I gently inquired what was troubling Kelly. She hesitated briefly before softly assuring me that nothing was wrong. In fact, she felt that everything was exceptionally right and flawless. She whispered the 3 significant words with overwhelming affection: "I love you, Dave." We soon found ourselves joyfully planning a simple wedding. Kelly was content, her smile a constant presence. Gina was a great support to my bride-to-be, assisting her in every way. She was a constant companion to us. I came to realize that I had misjudged Gina. She was indeed a very kind person. At times, I felt deep regret for suspecting that she wished for Kelly and me to part ways. Mike, on the other hand, attempted to reach out to my beloved Kelly several times, but she consistently dodged any interaction or encounters with him, to my relief. I had never been more certain of her love and fidelity. Not long before our wedding, Kelly shared some thrilling news with me. One evening, her delayed return from work caused me some concern, but it was short-lived. Arriving home an hour later, Kelly announced that I was going to be a father and she was going to be a mother. Overwhelmed with joy and bewilderment, I found myself at a loss for words. It took me a few moments to process whether her words were reality or just a joke. I realized that I was even more elated than she was. My beloved Kelly and I were on the cusp of a bright and joyous future. Just as I had always hoped, my life had become a series of unending joys. Gina also brought us delightful news. Her boyfriend had finally proposed, asking her to marry him.